Hey, it's Mazzy. Welcome back. I want to talk about the Beatles' 1968 album, the White Album, but I'm going to center it around conceptual artwork. The original album that came out in November of 1968. This is my original American version. This was the first album the Beatles released on their own custom label, Apple Records, and they were numbered then. I'll get into other copies that I have, but I want to talk about the conceptual side of the artwork. I want to talk about a little bit about Richard Hamilton, conceptual artist who Paul McCartney brought in to design the cover. Now, I've had heavy debates over the decades about the legitimacy of the artwork of this. I think it's brilliant. Some people will say, I could have done that, but you didn't. Richard Hamilton did it. He designed the poster and the inserts that came into it, this entire package with the embossed and is the numbering system on all the pressings, the initial pressings of the White Album. But this is really dedicated to Rutherford Chang, 45-year-old New York conceptual artist. I believe he was originally from Houston, grew up in Los Altos, California, moved to New York, and did this project in 2013. Now, I saw it in New York in a gallery. My buddy Coleman saw it when it toured. It toured a few cities, including Liverpool. It included Sacramento, California, around 2014 or so. But I want to talk about We Buy White Albums, the installation, the performance, the collection of Rutherford Chang. Now, he passed away at the age of 45 just several days ago. As of this recording, we don't know the cause. It's a very young age for anyone to die. I will pull some of my albums as we go along here. I have many copies. I'm not going to even tell you what they are, get into the specifics of it, but I'll end up showcasing this creation by Rutherford Chang. I'll intersperse pictures from his gallery shows in here. Now, what he did, which was really interesting, he collected White Albums as a kid, one of his favorite Beatles albums, and he only collects White Albums, and he only collects White Albums that are numbered. So not this, not reissues, not the ones in the later 70s into the 80s that were not numbered here. He would have records not like this. He would have records like this, numbered record, these numbered records. Now, interesting enough, at one point, when people were looking at his gallery show, which I'll talk to you in a minute, he keeps these in the bins and on the walls in numerical order. That's why he only collects White Albums with numbers, with stamped numbers, which I think is really fascinating, really interesting. Obsessive, yes, but I love the concept of this thing. And the way he put together these shows, they were like installations of literally putting together a record store. I believe in the Sacramento show, which I didn't see, that Coleman saw, it was in a storefront. So it was as if you're walking into a record store. He took donations, but he only took donations of records, of White Album versions that were numbered, stamped, and he would put them in order. He realized at a young age when he would get copies, used copies, he'd pick up. Those days, White Albums were cheap. He'd buy copies of them, and all of a sudden, over the years, he'd realize some copies were faded, some were marked, some were mildewed, some had other people's drawings. These were basically blank canvases for people to draw on, write their names, write illustrations, post, glue photos in, all kinds of things. The conceptual art side of this really attracted Rutherford Chang, and he put this whole thing together. Here is another copy, a not embossed copy. I have many more down in box sets below. I'm hoping that now that he's gone, the collection stays intact. I hope they don't split up and just try to sell these copies. I think this is something that a museum should buy and incorporate it in their permanent collection. I don't know if there's any possibility of that. I don't know if he's been doing this up until to recent days. I think it's been an ongoing collection obsession. He also did this, and what's interesting about this is in each show, in each installation of a record store, he'd have a couple of turntables there, and he would constantly play the White Album. Apparently, he played the White Album every single day. Now, I don't know how long that continued, but when he did that show about starting around 2014, so about 11 years ago, he played the White Album every single day. And during the installation, he had 2 turntables and would constantly be playing the White Album. So he would record them digitally at the same time. Eventually what he did is he got another digital artist to layer 100 copies of these recordings over each other and press them to vinyl. And they were pressed. 1,000 copies were sold for about $20 to $30 at the time. This is one of them. Obviously, this is one of the more intricate artworks, one of the intricate covers that he found that someone drew on. So what's really interesting about this is not an easy listen. It's basically like industrial and noise. It starts out with a really worn copies of the White Album from back in the USSR, and you hear sort of these echoes of all the copies being played together, all 100 copies. They're layered at the same time. Some are scratched, some are just really worn, and he's playing them, and these 100 copies are layered digitally. Eventually, as the record continues, after 1 track, 2 track, you realize that the speeds of the different versions of the turntables, of maybe the mastering, who knows what it is, they get out of alignment, they get out of sync, and eventually you hear a wash of echo. And very much like if you've ever heard Jay-Z's Black Album mashed with the Beatles White Album that Danger Mouse did, and it's called the Gray Album. That is another sort of a conceptual mashup piece that I find very interesting. But that's what this is. And it really it can gnaw at you at times because it's noise, but at essence, you hear the Beatles songs that we're all familiar with at times. Long out of print. It came with a poster of a lot of his copies. And look at this. How cool is this, right? Various copies of Rutherford Chang's We Buy White albums. Very cool. That's it. So this is in the memory of Rutherford Chang. Our best and our good sending vibes to his family and his friends. And I hope this installation lives on in some kind of a museum or gallery form, because I think it's something that the public should see. It's very interesting. It's very fun. And it makes you smile. We buy White albums. Mazzy loves you.